Hey guys, it's Stoof. Welcome back to my channel. Alright, we've made it to part 2 of this painting tutorial. We're going to focus on painting the flowers and the basket and finishing up the painting. Alright guys, welcome back to part 2 of this painting tutorial. We are going to paint in the flowers and the leaves and the stems today. And I'm mostly just going to be using this number 2 round brush. So I'm going to start with all of the deeper shadows and then we're going to build up the highlights. Let's start with some primary magenta, black, and purple, and a little ultramarine blue. And I'm just going to get these in here. Adding a little bit of quad magenta. So outlining these helps a lot to get started. Okay, now I'm going to take some primary magenta with light magenta and do a little blending and a little bit of just applying these colors. Taking more of my light magenta and a little light ultramarine. A little more light magenta. And you want to start to blend a little bit. Once you get these ones farther out from the center, they blend a little bit into the shadowy tones that you put in. More light magenta. I'm going to take some primary magenta, blend this in to get a middle tone, just very gently pressing back and forth. Come back to my darker color there for a sec. Quad magenta and white. And gonna make us a little darker at the center part there. Blend that out. Go back to my light magenta, And my deeper one right here. Got a bit of a blend. And there's one more that's like a quad magenta with light magenta right here. Putting my quad magenta right there with a little bit of ultramarine just to help separate that. And I'm going to go in with more quad magenta at all of these little ridges just to help separate the petals from one another. Adding some purple with our primary magenta. Okay, and do some primary magenta and white. Just warm things up a little bit. And you want to keep working on this while paint's still a little wet so you can get a little bit of a blend. If you just want to layer things up after it dries, you can do that too. You're just going to have a different style, like it's going to look a little bit different than this. Now let's take some more white. Put a nice little highlight right there. Okay, and that's looking pretty nice for our first rose. I'm going to go ahead and add in the leaves. So I'm just mixing Terra Verte with Phthalo Green, ochre, and some raw burnt umber. And let's do some light ultramarine blue. Just mix a little bit more ochre and brown, and we can just take our brush, go right up to the petal, paint that in. And you can take ultramarine blue and Terra Verte with some burnt sienna and a little phthalo green to paint the part of the leaf closest to the flower. Just gives it a little bit more depth. All right, I'm going to use the same color right here. I've got another one right here. Go back to my lighter color. And there's another one like right here. Now let's move over to this one up here. I'll start with my deeper shadows again with purple and quad magenta, a little bit of blue, a little bit of black, maybe a little bit of primary magenta too. Just looking at where I sketched the petals and trying to put my shadows where those go. Getting a little bit more primary magenta. Okay. Cleaning off my brush, going back to that middle mix I had here with primary magenta and white. Let's do a little quad magenta in there too. And I'm just going to very gently press here. It's a little more quad magenta and regular magenta just to bring the value down. Get a little bit less contrast between light and dark here. Just doing a little bit of a soft blend. Adding a little more white right there. Got a petal here that needs a little more white. Adding some more shadows in again. It's my primary magenta and a little bit of purple. Just mixing in some primary magenta and white. And let's do a little quad magenta too. And let's go back to our lighter colors one more time. my darker color. Mixing black and quad magenta again, just to get this shape a little bit better right here. Down and start to work on this guy. You need quad magenta and light ultramarine blue for this one. Gonna mix in some light magenta. Mixing in more purple here. I'm going to mix a little bit of light ultramarine blue. And some of our lighter colors. We've got black with our phthalo green, some raw umber, and ultramarine blue. That's our nice dark green color. Got another leaf right up here. And we're going to put one right here too. Okay. Got a couple more right down here. And I'm just gonna, while I have this on my brush, add a few more that are in here. Gonna add a little ultramarine, light ultramarine to this one. Maybe a little bit of regular ultramarine too, because it's kind of in shadow a little bit. So it's a little cooler. Gonna mix in purple, quad magenta, black, primary magenta. Get our deeper shadows. More primary magenta. And I'm gonna go back to our midtones. And let's add some light magenta and quad magenta. Just adding a little bit of light ultramarine blue and our deeper shadow color there. And I'm going to take some black with umber and blue, and I'm just going to touch up the ridge for the basket. And go back to my deeper shadows. Take some primary magenta and light magenta and quad magenta. Okay, that one looks nice. Next, we're going to go over to this one. So same thing, starting with those darker values. And you can mix a little bit of ultramarine in where it's really dark. little more light ultramarine. A little more white and light ultramarine. And we've got, I'm going to put another little green petal over here. And let's do this one down here. Start with my shadows. Magenta and black. More magenta and black. Okay, we're going to take our white, mix it in with our lighter colors, get some light magenta. And I'm just going to blend that down in some spots. If you want a really smooth blend, you may want to have another small, like a number 2 or a number 4 flat tip brush. That might be a little bit easier to blend than this round tip brush. I'm going for a little bit more of a painterly look for this one, so I'm just going to keep using this round tip brush. Mixing in my quad magenta. More quad magenta right there. And then for the bud next to it, mix some more of my darker colors for the bit of the unopened bud. And it'll be a little deeper, darker at the base, a little bit lighter right there. And should be pretty light. Some of these little spots here. Put more green. Down here, and more black. Cut our little flower. I'm gonna mix some white and light ultramarine. Oh, sorry, that's not white. That's Cad Yellow light. Just to get a little bit of light on this and help separate that. Same thing right here. And with the stem, take some more black, phthalo green. Put these little leaves in here. And I'm just going to take more brown, a little bit of blue, and just fill in this space right here because this is basket. Next, let's get these ones. More black is mixed in here to get the shadows. taking more magenta. Mix a little more white in there. Okay, mix in more of my magenta. Just to blend a little bit here. And taking some light magenta. Blending down a little. Okay. Might build up a little bit more shadow in this one. Okay, looks better. And let's see, we got this guy up here. I'm gonna add some quick little highlights to this one. And this one. And this one, just to brighten them up and make them a little bit more consistent with the rest of the roses here. Next, we got this guy up here. Adding a highlight right there. And then it's going to go to a shadow pretty quick so it's not confused with this petal right there. And I'm just going to put a little bit of some petals over here. And we're going to make this one be mostly covered up. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit more of that green color. Right there. All right. Well, I got the flowers blocked in. Now let's work on the wicker basket. For the wicker basket, I'm going to use this same brush. And I'm going to start with the ochre and white, Naples, Ultramarine, Purple, and burnt sienna. All right, we've got a few of these vertical lines. The harder you press, the thicker your line is going to be. So if you want a thin line, then use less pressure. I'm going to mix a little bit of brown umber in there. Okay, that looks good. Next, we're going to do umber mixed in with what we just had, maybe a little bit more ochre and a little bit of purple. That was too much purple. More ochre, a little bit more white again, and I'll do a little bit of burnt sienna too. Okay, so next we've got these lines about this thick that go in between these vertical lines that you just put in. And you can just do like a little bit of lines right there. Gonna mix in a little more white and Naples. Come back with my horizontal lines. Gonna put more umber in here now as we're getting into more of a shadowy spot. And just a little bit in there. Okay, next we're gonna take some white and some Naples. I'm gonna add some highlights on those lines that I just did. So in the center part of each of these lines, you do a little highlight. And I'm pressing pretty gently, like putting a little bit more pressure down in the center part. So it looks like a little highlight now. And you don't want to completely cover up that color you had down. I'll mix my brown back in here to make these highlights a little bit less obvious. All right, and the next step is to now make some lines that kind of interweave in between these ones. So I'm going to mix umber and white, ochre, that ultramarine color again, some more ochre, a little bit of burnt sienna. And now, so in between these two lines, about halfway like this, is where we want these ones to go. And you can give them like a slight curve. Doesn't need too much of a curve, just a little bit. And put a little bit more brown over here. And a little bit more brown. One last round over here. A little bit more curved over there. And that's in general how we get the basket. If you want to go into more detail, you don't have to, but if you want to, then what we would do is take some more burnt sienna, purple, black, brown, and ochre, and we would just underline all of these. And that'll just give it a little bit more depth. And you definitely want to have like that slight arc U shape. me just take a little bit more umber and make these a little darker over here because they're kind of in shadow. You can mix a little blue in there too. Put our leaves back in here with some umber, green, cad yellow. Use some light ultramarine blue and white to get the outline shape of some of these. Can add a little bit of ochre too. Taking some ultramarine. A little bit more Terra Verte. Okay, and then I just realized that this down here needs to be not plants. There we go. So I'm just filling that in. And the last thing is the stuff up here. So I'm just gonna take some ochre and white and just get our little basket. I'm going to take more white and a hint of purple here. And we just have a bunch of long lines like this, with a slight curve to some of them. And same thing on this side. All right, and then we're just going to take some umber. Just going to thin it down a little. Just put some little umber lines in between these to help separate. Same over here. And it's good to do this while everything is still wet in the handle because you can get a little bit of a blend. So that is, in general, how you would paint a beagle with a wicker basket full of roses. I am going to do some more work to this painting so that I can have it ready to sell and sell prints of. I'm going to speed that up for you guys though, because the basics of creating this painting are covered. At this point, it's just me tweaking little features, boosting some highlights, boosting the contrast a little bit until it looks good enough for me. Alright guys, that wraps up our painting tutorial. Have a happy Valentine's Day. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and like this video if you enjoyed this. That helps me out a lot. Happy painting! Bye bye!